Well, welcome. Yeah, to the Film Art Food Festival, edition 2021. This is the second time actually that we're doing the FAF for this year, because we had a previous version that we did, but that was during the Corona crisis. It was a smaller version. A lot of it was online. And also in collaboration with the municipality and the Maas Festival, which is not here this year, it should have been, but it's not. We decided to do it again and then really tap into the subject of opening up after the Corona crisis, being together, inviting people back again, also inviting people that we work with on a local basis, and to talk about farming and farming practices and food practices. So yeah, we wanted to kickstart our relationship back with the community and bring back these physical aspects of our relation as an art academy with food and food production. This edition, again, we bring a combination of film screenings, dinners, workshops, field trips, and tastings, all coordinated and curated by Marente van der Valk, who will also talk about it a little bit after me. And this time we have invited guests, our distinguished guests that are sitting next to me, that we have amongst us tonight. And some of the participants of the Jan van Eyck Academy are here as well, who have organized some of the dinners of this weekend. I also wanted to touch upon the larger aspects of the Food Art Film Festival, some of which can be brought back closer in time. This summer, as you might have noticed, in the EU region, we have experienced a terrible cascading events of flooding in the region. My own home village of Cannes also was threatened with the flooding of the Albert Canal. It was also the first time I've ever experienced what it means to be under such threat. So also myself and my wife got an SMS to evacuate, to prepare to evacuate. And we were lucky other villages, such as the village of Verviers, which we drove by the following day, completely got flooded. Homes were literally washed away by the water. Furniture or remains scattered over streets, and weeks after you could see the debris floating in the water of the Meuse and Albert Canal. A very scary sight. It was also at the same time, just a couple of weeks later, that the 6th assessment of the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change was launched. The AR6, as people call it, and it felt close to us, also because of the fact that we had the honor to have two of the vice chairs of the IPCC here in March during the Earthsea Intensive. And then to have 3 months later, the AR6 being very clear in its statement, just after the flooding. I summarize and I paraphrase. That is unequivocal that humans have warmed the planet, causing widespread and rapid changes to Earth's systems. That the present state is unprecedented and changes are irreversible. We're already experiencing climate change, and some more than others, including more frequent and more extreme weather events. The consequences will continue to get worse for every bit of warming. And for many of these consequences, there's no going back. It's a clear message. At the same time, I see, and this gives me hope, people resisting, fighting, coming up with new ideas within their means to cope with this dark prospect laying ahead of us. And some of them, and some are with us today, take older techniques and methods at hand, but also invent new methods of, for instance, farming and food production. And this is what we'll be talking today about. And this is the benefits and challenges of small-scale and local food production with professionals in the fields and artists that takes these subjects and bridge it within artistic practice. I will now give the word to Marente, who will give us a little bit more insight on who's sitting in the panel, and then the panelists can introduce themselves. I would like to ask everybody to sit, maybe Angela, would you mind sitting in the audience? So when we switch to audience, then we at least have people. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Welcome all. Thank you, Bruno. Marente, I'll give the stage to you. Here you go.
I might just sit down. Welcome everyone to FUF, the 4th edition 2021. I'm so happy that it's a live edition as well as an online edition. And I'm very happy to have the farmers here to show a little bit of the growers and farmers of, who are actually feeding Maastricht, and to hear a little bit about their stories and their difficulties they're facing, things like seed diversity, whether to farm organically or not, and sustainability as a wider sort of framework. Yeah, I don't want to talk too much. I'll just start with the introduction round. We start with Nikki, then we have Reinier, who farms locally in Cannes, food forest specialist Mark, and a local farmer Wim, who farms just over the border in Belgium. So we'll start with Nikki. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Nikki Sigurdsson, and I'm a participant here in the Jan van Eyck Academie. And I have a background in agriculture and art. And one of the projects that I've been doing here during my residency was to initiate a garden in one of the outdoor spaces among the buildings. And I wanted to investigate the potential of such a space. Although it was not a very big space, it was also a space, a plot of land which was mostly overshadowed, so there was not a lot of sun. But I wanted to investigate what sort of space or plot of land could give to this place, and also, yeah, what potential it could have. For example, in terms of seed saving and planting sort of heirloom and rare species of vegetables and herbs, a bit inspired by a monastery garden, which also had this sort of function within a confined space to safeguard seed cultures and also knowledges, forgotten knowledges or ancient knowledges of health technologies. And another aspect of the project was also to see what the space could do in this communal context, and in what way it could enhance the community and even generate a sort of community around gardening activities or rituals or etc. And then I also introduced some animals. I introduced some Indian runner ducks to the garden because there was a lot of snails. So that was also an interesting experiment. And yeah, can maybe come back to that later. But it had also a very important function in the sort of institutional ecosystem. Yeah, so that's my project here, doing the Jan van Eyck. Thank you.
My name is Reinier Hoon. Well, first of all, thank you, by the way, Marente and Isham, for the invitation. I think it's really exciting that the Van Eyck Academy invites farmers into the building, and that we, create bonds between artists and people produce or work professionally with food. So yeah, I mean, looking forward to the event. To introduce myself, I grow vegetables on a little over 1 hectare, spread out a bit around Cannes, which is the first village upstream on the Jeker Valley here in Belgium. Plots are located both in Wallonia, so the community of Bassange there, a municipality of Bassange, then in Cannes, and most vegetables are actually planted further downstream here in Maastricht. About 3/4 of a hectare there, and most of the diversity in vegetables is planted there on plots that for centuries have been used for diversified small-scale horticulture, which has, I mean, we can talk about that a bit more later perhaps, but the whole area of Sint-Pieter, Biesland, Vroenhoven, which is sort of the south edge of Maastricht, historically has always played a big role in supplying the city with food. So I have the honor to work there. And then in Canada there are about 80 laying hens as well, so chickens that play function like ducks can in making the farm more circular. And I grow those produce for 2 markets. So every week, once a week in Vizé in Wallonia, and on Saturday mornings in Cannes in my village. And then I supply a restaurant here in Maastricht, restaurant Harry's, 6 times a week with fresh produce. And for them, I grow. This is the 3rd season, a quarter of a hectare that is dedicated as their garden, basically. Yeah.
Hi, Mark Frank. Well, everything started with nature, but I do more than just trying to connect people with nature. Studied landscape design, landscape management, and later on made a transition into permaculture, and I got very intrigued by the idea, how can you actually use land, not just that it looks great or it has a nice design, but also can actually have food production for people, because it's a need, I guess. And so later on, I did the education into that, and I call myself a creative consultancy. I guide social projects if people want to have a social garden, community garden together. One of them is Tapijn. It's in the city park of Maastricht. It's about 1,000 square meters. It has some food production, but the main goal there is it has a society function. People work there who have no job, who are volunteering, retired, and they get to know each other. And I try to give them a platform to learn and to grow within that space. I am also a food forest expert. So I design food forests, I design edible gardens, and I plant them. And I think what gives me a lot of satisfaction in that is that I can tell the story behind it and where food actually comes from, and that it doesn't grow in the supermarket. So that's, for me, it's the relationship with the people that gives me a lot of satisfaction into that. So I also give wild edible plant tours, so people can learn about edible plants in the wild, because that's where everything comes from. That's our origin. And I think we should respect that and cherish that and learn about that. And so it's about nature, it's about people. And if you go one level up, I also give courses about awareness in general, which is mindfulness, to get them back in touch with themselves and also with each other. And I think it also corresponds with the context of what the artist is doing this here. How do you relate to your food? How do you relate to your environment? How do you relate to each other? I think it's a very big topic in general in the world. I'll leave it to that.
My name is Wim Storken. I am a small-scale organic farmer, certified organic. I live in Belgium, Gassenich, very close to the Dutch border. And like Renier, I have a part in Belgium, 1.5 hectare in Belgium and 0.5 hectare in the Netherlands, just across the border. I'm doing this as a profession for about 12 years. Before I did a very different job and I did other studies. I didn't study agriculture at all in school or something like that. It has been a hobby since I was very little, and it started with wondering about nature, and especially about plants, wild plants that are growing here. I wanted to know everything about it. I wanted to know every species. I still want, but it moved more from wanting to know everything to protect and to more to agriculture, because I see it has a huge impact on what's going on in this world. I sell my vegetables and fruit and small fruit most here in Maastricht by Boeren en Buren. It's a kind of web shop. You can order by internet, and there's one moment in a week you can pick up your vegetables. I also supply at the organic market on Thursday here in Maastricht, here at the academy. And when I have enough, but I cannot produce enough in this moment, it goes to Gedeelde Weelde, that corporation. I think that's for now.
Thank you. Yeah, fantastic. So, in fact, you all work locally. Maybe then we can tap a little bit into the theme of the local. It is relevant what local means, as well as the trajectory of local movements within food activism or movements in general, and the shortfalls of such movements. But maybe I'm more interested actually in this idea of the local and what it means. And you were also mentioning, Wim, you cannot produce enough, and there's all these shortfalls that you have, and these walls that you hit, etc., that are connected to the local as opposed to the larger schemes of food production. Maybe we can tap a little bit into that. Maybe can you already start maybe telling us a little bit how that feels as a farmer. You're producing locally, you want to provide, and then there's all these challenges that you hit. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that, and maybe then we can go to other people and talk about that?
I do my best. Yeah. My English isn't good.
You can also, sorry, if you want, do it in Dutch and I translate that. That's a possibility, or half. Yeah.
There are a lot of challenges for a small-scale farmer. First, it's the access to soil, the access to ground. It's really a difficult thing, especially here in the Netherlands and Belgium.
Yeah.
It has a big part has to do with the price of a plot.
Mm-hmm.
They are het zijn middelen geworden voor mensen die willen investeren.
Mm-hmm. Their means for the land has become a means to invest.
Yeah.
A means of investment.
Prices are so high that one generation cannot gain enough money to pay it back.
Right.
It's a huge difference if you compare to, for example, France or other countries in Europe, where the prices are a third till 1/8 of the prices.
Right.
So if you are not a farmer's son, like me, it's almost impossible to find a place to grow.
Right.
That's one point. Sorry,
I'll switch to Reinier maybe.
Yeah, or maybe I can link into.
Can you grab?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry about this
specifically
microphone thing.
To that question of access to land, and also my own experience there, and also the opportunities that are there for local and small scale farming. Because I maybe or like Wim, my parents are not farmers. And yeah, I started. I've been growing vegetables since I remember, more or less, and then started until I was 16, 17, and then went working more in restaurants, in service, and so to service and in kitchens. Then went studying, and after that, also started teaching a bit in what I'd been studying, more in philosophy and especially political philosophy. And after that, well, a few months, realized that didn't feel as that was necessary to start doing something with the ideals, and also, I came back to this area and also the area where I'd been growing food before on a small plot, Yeah, and at some point, I mean, decided to give up the job and jump into farming. So at once full time. And in my experience, actually, I mean, I had the privilege of moving back to the village where I grew up, and having worked for farmers there when I was a kid and an adolescent. I knew some people and who were willing to rent me land. So in that sense, I was able to start. And for me, in that sense, in that experience, access to land was not that difficult. However, indeed, access to land in a way in which you can be absolutely sure that nobody can kick you off that soil. So like long-term lease, what we call pacht in Dutch, or being able to buy, that's much more difficult. So for that, you either need to have the money here in the area around, well, at least 50,000 euros a hectare, or you need to be able to convince the bank with your a business model, and that where they would be willing to lend that kind of money to you, which is very much not evident when you start as a small scale farmer. There are organizations like Landgenoten in Belgium, for example, who really try and help starting farmers to have access to land. So that's far from easy, because there are many colleagues who are much more powerful financially, who are very eager to buy every piece that is available. That having said, I do think that if I look at the business model of most colleagues, then basically if you look at the cost structure of large scale farming to small scale diversified horticulture, then actually for me the price of land is much lower in if you look at that in the sort of the bigger picture of the total cost I make to run to produce on 1 hectare, then that's much less than for people who produce potatoes or cereals really? on a large surface, because their land is a major part of the equation, what it costs to grow 1 hectare. For me, that's like lease is a relatively I mean, I spend much more on seeds.
The cost of land. That's,
exactly. And if you then see on what you can do in turnover on vegetables on 1 hectare a year compared to potatoes for the industry, then actually we have, as small-scale farmers, much more to offer in terms of what we could pay for a hectare, simply because it's much more valuable.
But how is this? This is the cost of land. But how is this if you talk about labor? Because in your case, you're growing about 80 species in a small plot of land. So that means there's a lot of manual labor there.
Yeah. So that's another challenge, right?
Exactly. So, and I was just wondering if that, because the larger picture of this is that we do want to produce locally. We want to produce more locally because it's better. Maybe we can tap into that, whether it is better, in fact. And then there is the other question, how that taps into the idea of certification, growing organically and things like that. Just to go back to Wim, and then I'll take it to you, Wim. How is that for you? I mean, the cost of land is something, and then there is labor.
It's just one part. The labor is a big part. It's a difficult thing. I work just on my own. Just now and then there is some help, but especially this year, I find out that it's impossible or almost impossible to keep on working this way, just to work on my own. About the certification, you want? No?
Even tap into for the public also for them to understand. I assume that not everybody knows the practice of farming. What in fact is the difference? What in fact is the difference between farming on your own, locally, small scale, as to the other types of farming? Because the challenges that you face have to do with the facts about skill. It's about skill as well.
Yes, skill and materials you use. As an organic farmer, I don't spray anything.
Yeah.
I use very little materials to work with. I own a tractor, a small tractor, but it's more for transport than using it for cultivating my field, because I have different plots. It's more different. Not just at my home. I have a glass house, but the other plots are 500 and 1.5 kilometer away. So that tractor is most for that. A big farmer use a lot of machines who are not good for soil, not good for many other things, but he probably needs them to keep on working in that kind of system.
Right.
I made another choice.
Exactly.
I grow a lot of varieties, not that much as Rainier, but for example, 25 different species of tomatoes.
Yeah. How am I fascinated that?
Faster? Yeah. Thank you. And I made the choice to work together with one colleague, organic farmer, who has more land and who is growing some crops I cannot grow.
Yeah.
It depends on the soil and it depends on the surface you have. If you want to grow potatoes for selling, you need a lot of space.
Yeah.
If like tomatoes, it just takes a small amount. I also don't grow, for example, leek. And the reason of that is that I am living between several farmers who are growing leek on a big scale. It attracts the leek fly and other ravageur animals. Yes. And they spray, and they spray really a lot on leek. It's one of the worst things. But I cannot spray, so I even don't sell the little plants because they probably are already infected by those pests. I can cover it, that's true,
but this is as a result because you don't use pesticides.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
So you have to make hard choices relating to whether you're using pesticides or not.
But a colleague of mine, he's living 15 kilometers from me. He is in a region there are no farmers who are growing leek. He can grow it.
Okay. Yeah.
It's also the things you are growing. It depends also on the soil you have. I have, for example, a very different kind of soil than here around Maastricht. That poorer soil, I would say.
Okay. So exactly. Yeah. So that your soil, you are able to grow many more species. That's in fact.
Can I add something to the financial part you were telling both? Maybe I'm not sure if it applies for you, but most farmers, they don't count their own hours they put in per week, so they just have profit or loss, and that's it. And it's a very unfair thing if you look at that. Like most entrepreneurs, they count their hours in a project, and that's how they calculate. And it's pretty weird that the people who produce our food have such a bare financial conditions and can't really take into account their own hours of labor and having a good salary for that. But I'm not sure if it applies for you both.
Well, that's a larger question. What's the future of local production? I think if you want to take it there, is there a future? That's interesting. If we hear about these challenges, maybe Nikki, you want to? Yeah, because then we're talking about local production, small scale, motivated by yourself. You put in your own labor. It's the same as artists, in fact. Artists also put in their own labor, and they don't think about whether it's profitable or not. I mean, there's not. You just do what you need to do. So there's an intrinsic motivation that is huge. Probably you work with volunteers, etc., etc. So how is that opposed to, let's say, the larger structures? Because we are here talking about the local, and we know that this is an answer to the problems that I sketched before, right? We know that we should go this way.
But the question of Mark is a very relevant question, and I would like to give an answer. No, I don't count the hours I work, and there's not a good income. I have still a small income, I must say, because of the work I did before. And I can manage it. But it's really a difficult thing. Also because if we talk about organic food, the Netherlands and Belgium are really not doing well. If you look at the surface of agriculture surface that's used for organic farming, both countries are the worst students of the European class. Many people don't expect that because we talk a lot about organic, but in real, it's a very bad situation. We use organic food, but if that label is on it, it's okay for many people. Local is not an issue. Here in the Netherlands, since Corona, organic market increased a lot, but the number of farmers or the number of land that's used for organic, it didn't. We prefer to let other countries and people work for a very small price in other countries. A lot of our food comes from Spain, from Morocco, from other countries, but doing it here, it's not the consuming of organic is going well. The production is really, really bad. I want to speak about that later.
Maybe it's good, like Hisham asked, like how does the future look in local production? And I think it would be great to have a system which is like a CSA, like community-supported agriculture. Like if you have like a Reinier, if you have fixed clients that not just pay for the product, but also support you even though when the yield varies, if you have a bad year or a good year. If you have a CSA construction, then the costs are covered and the yield can vary per year. And so the income of the farmer is ensured, costs are covered. I think that's a very social and a fair system to have a relationship with your farmer, not just with the food, if you have a relationship with food. I think that's how we should relate to each other and to our environment. So. CSA, well, we have one in Maastricht already. We need much more. So
that's gedeelde wilde?
No, it's a locutuinen.
Oh, okay.
So people have a subscription. So they have 1 year of.
In that sense, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So you're bound to it. It's like you have your contract for the internet or your phone, and that means you're standing for something, you're voting for something, and you live with something. I think that's very important to be connected with that. No matter if you have 10 sprouts or 15 sprouts per week, you can harvest. As an example.
Yeah, so I think it's important to mention there that you basically the consumer shares part of the risk with the farmer,
right.
And that's also what maybe enables young people without huge start capital to buy a farm to actually start farming,
right?
Because I think that's something we didn't mention so much before. Like why would you start like a small scale local production? And that is maybe because you actually like can afford that without having a lot of debt in a bank, for example. Yeah. And you don't need tons of machines, but yeah, you do need a lot of volunteers possibly. So that's like another maybe side of that. But yeah, I also just wanted to add that there are many forms of CSA, and like the one that Wim is part of with the Boeren and Beuren is one form. You can still call it a CSA, I think. And then there's the Lokotownen. Then maybe, Rainer, you said to me the other day that you also think that the market culture that you're part of is a form of CSA because you have local customers that keep coming back to you. So in a way, you cannot really say that it's a CSA, but in some way, like the local farmers market, it's also an important community generator. And yeah,
it's possible it doesn't cover his risk.
No, I mean,
that's it,
yeah. I think there are different models or different ways in which you can shape small scale and diversified farms. And yeah, I really admire and appreciate colleagues who like here in Maastricht, Locotuinen, but there are other examples in Belgium, actually in Flanders. There are enormous rise or a boom in those kind of like self-picking farms, particularly where people pay a subscription. And I think that's a beautiful model indeed, and that also I think I see that it works well for many farmers, exactly because it gives that certainty and also cash at the beginning of the year to finance the beginning of the season, which is the most expensive part of the year, but also the part of the year where you have the least revenue. Which for me this year, for example, was for a long time. You grow in size and you're financing your season, which can be exciting, to put it in a positive way. But it's also very much a personal question, I think, of what model you opt for, because I know for myself that having one of the reasons why I gave up the job I had was because that certainty is something that makes me personally more anxious than that it gives me peace. To me, being able to navigate through the season, see that there are perhaps new opportunities, or and really going with the production there is, and offering that to my customers on the market, and being flexible there is what works for me. I think that there are just different models. I have to say that the arrangement I have with a restaurant, for example, that is a CSA in the sense that they just pay a fixed fee for growing vegetables on their garden, which is part of a sort of a fixed income, which gives a bit of a basis, and then markets are a bit more variable, right? So there are also maybe hybrid forms you can find there. I think it's very important that as a farmer you figure out a formula that works for you.
It's true that it's not just one model that's a good CSA for many farmers. It's a good thing. For me, for example, I don't think it would work. CSA works better close to a city than in a rural environment. Also, CSA, and the way I see it, it's that people come to your field and take the vegetables. If you have 3 or 4 different plots in a big circle, it's not that easy. Maybe it's also a very personal choice. I'm not good in delegate too much, so this is, for me, it wouldn't be the best solution. But there are a lot of mixed methods, like the Solawi in Germany, the Solidarische Landwirtschaft, where people gather and work together and share the profit.
But I think there that at least building a link between what matters, I think, deeply, or part of what matters deeply to me as a farmer is that I have a direct connection with my customers, and that on a weekly basis we share experiences, both of what my work is like, but also what my consumers think of, or my customers think of what I grow, and that there is feedback there, and that I can explain what's going on, and that indeed either people might, I mean, the customers I have might not be that prone to come harvest themselves, because it might not fit in their schedules, but they come. Like this year, my open day was like a tour past the different fields, for example, and then there is actually a real tie that you bond, or that you create between the people that you're feeding, and to me that's one of the most, I think, powerful and things about this work is that when you're after a market day on Saturday, you sit down in your dinner and you think there are like perhaps 50 or 60 families eating your food. That's, at least that's to me, that's goosebumps, and that's what you do the work for, and knowing that through that work and having seen them that they're eating differently. I think that is, for me, one of the main motivations of doing that work, and that feels very much as being supported by a community of consumers. Yeah.
This supporting of that group is very important to me too. And I think to everyone who is growing food. But I would like to say a little about the income and about money for good food. Call it organic or not, but I mean decent food from not too far away. We often hear that organic food is very expensive. It's indeed more expensive than food you can buy frozen or in a supermarket. But if something is expensive, to say that something is expensive, you are comparing it. You can compare it to food you get in a supermarket, and in that case, yes, it costs more. It's more work, but not about that now. If you compare, if you say it's expensive, and you compare it, the part of your income you are using for food, you look worldwide, then food is very, very cheap here in Western countries. So a good income for a farmer, it's still far away. For even if you grow organic or not organic, if you don't change your pattern of consuming here, then nothing will change.
Do you have percentages, maybe? I would be really interested.
No, I don't have them now. I can give you.
This comparison is really valuable.
I'm a member of Wervel. That's a Belgian association of people, part farmers, but people who are working with food, and they want. One of their goals is to make food and agriculture more democratically, not just here but worldwide, and to show om mensen daarvan bewust te maken,
to make people conscious of it,
aware about the situation. We are, if we, sorry. One of the founders of Wervel, he is writing a lot about food worldwide. We are speaking about here about this. He's speaking a lot about the situation of meat growing here in the Netherlands and Belgium, and but especially here, and the soya production in Brazil. It's such a terrible situation, and I would say, how dare we to blame Brazil cutting the Amazon. It's because of our profit, our greed. We want to have soya as cheap as possible for our pigs, for our agro industry. It has to do with our way of consumption. We want to eat meat every day, or many people want to eat, but it's not just that. The way the agro industry works here in the Netherlands and Belgium, it's based on export. I'm very angry as a Belgian farmer about the government. They ask for, it's just an example, they ask a contribution, a kind of tax of every farmer to make promotion on television. It's called Vlam. They have also 1 or 2 weeks for organic farming in that promotion, but normally it's going about eat food, eat pigs, eat meat from here. But meat from here, what is it? It's industrial farming of pigs who are pollinating our environment on a terrible way, or not just pigs, chicken and everything. And we feed them with feed we take on the other side of the world, and we take away the income from the real farmers over there who should grow their own food.
Exactly.
That's a terrible situation. But they say, let's eat meat from here. Look at how beautiful it looks. Yeah. And organic has a place in that Vlam promotion, but we as organic farmers don't have anything. We don't have any influence on the way of that promotion, and that's another thing that concerns, that make me angry. 2 years ago, they had a promotion. It's called de relevatie van de smaak. I don't know how to.
Wow.
It's
relevatie van de smaak.
Yeah. It
taste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
revelation of taste. Yeah.
There was showed a very chic, decadent entrance person in a castle who was eating real food. That's just the opposite as what I want as an organic farmer. It should be a standard. It should be those labels of organic. These are minimum
demands. Minimum, yeah. Standards. Yeah, sure.
It should be the standard of food, and they're making a caricature of it.
Yeah.
And that's sorry.
Yeah, because you see quite also the taps into certification. Maybe what does it mean to produce organic, and what are its limitations? Because it goes much beyond. And Ania, I know that you have different ideas related to it, and maybe then after them we can bring it to Mark and Nikki to shift the discussion a little bit towards artistic and food forests. But please, René.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that has always fascinated me in general is the flavor of what we eat. I mean, I grew up. My parents had a wine store here in Maastricht, and I spent a lot of time there. I spent a lot of time also when I get a bit older helping my father. And I mean, in wine, we pay an awful lot of attention to taste. We pay also a lot of attention there to the differences there are of wine that comes from different areas, that grows on different soils. Often even just 10 meters further, a wine can taste the same variety, same climate, can taste totally different, just the soil. we pay a lot of attention to differences in between cultivars, between different varieties, right? And then sub-varieties. We think, I mean, Pinot is not the same as Chardonnay, and Pinot Noir is not the same as Pinot Blanc, for example. In vegetables, we don't talk about that. We think a carrot is a carrot, right? Volgens de schijf van 5, or we need to, like, there are governmental institutions that advise us to eat 250 grams of vegetables a day, and then you eat healthy. And well, one of the things once I started, I mean, it's one of the right. Once I started in my first year, so 2.5 years ago, I of course started also ordering seeds, and then you have to make decisions about where you order seeds, and I also started reading up more on what kind of options you have there then, and there is tremendous diversity in for example, what varieties of carrots you can order, and they differ on many variables, on how fast they grow, what color they have, etc., etc. And then, of course, I mean, and especially for the restaurant I was growing vegetables for, I wanted to grow the most flavorful vegetables. I mean, that's what matters to them. So then, what do? I mean, most of the seed catalog says the mostly, or where I was ordering mostly German, and then the description says "gute Geschmack," and that's it. So I ordered many. I mean, I ordered an immense diversity of, I mean, like 8 different varieties of red beets and 12 varieties of orange carrots, etc., and trialed all of them. And tasted them also with the chefs in that first year in the restaurants we made, for example, also like salads of 8 varieties of red beets, which is one way of gaining complexity in a dish, right? And while reading up on that, I think I realized more and more how there is organic, and how there are carrots, and that there is there are immense differences in flavor. But then I also learned more and more, not just flavor, but nutrients. And that link, I mean, realizing, I think that the moment that clicked, that's also through the research of people who also just recently started like researching into the variation there is in nutrient density between vegetables of the same type. But once that clicked, that taste is, at the moment, the best quick indicator we have of nutrient density, and that combined with the fact that we find scientifically that there are differences in carrots to like carrots that are up to 200 times more nutritious that look more or less the same, right? That the differences are often, tremendous. I think that there, I mean, for me it's, what I aim to do in my work is to try and grow vegetables that are most flavorful, and that for me goes beyond working organically in the sense of not using any synthetic products on my fields or in my field, and working with organically certified seeds, etc. But it goes to, I mean, that story is for me about the absence of bad things, which is important. But then comes the presence of good things. And that story is much like, that's not black and white. Being organic or non-organic is in a way black or white, because you have the certificate or you don't. You check the boxes or you don't. And in a way that's important, but also, to me less interesting, and it looks less fascinating than understanding why some plants taste well in a certain moment, in certain circumstances, have a different flavor on other moments. And then, you realize along the way, and I guess that you'll always be a beginner in that, but that it's the type of your soil, it's the health of your soil. So it's how complex your cover crops are, for example, how many species there are in your cover crops. It's the varieties you use. It's how you fertilize them. It's when you plant them. Their interaction with the weather. There is their interaction with each other. So the close neighbors, the plants that are, like if you see coriander in your carrots, they might be healthier, or well, my experience is that they're healthier than when you don't, for example. So I think that, to me that is, if you speak about.
For me, it's really important to link back to that community that supports you, to educate them basically about the taste, because a long time, I think definitely in the Netherlands, things have been cultivated to be agreeable, so not too bitter, not too sharp. So to bring that back to actually an understanding of nutritional value and an appreciation for these diverse flavors, and to focus more on the wealth of plants than.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, if you I mean, that's even, I would say, philosophically incredibly important, in the sense that if you realize that eating tasty vegetables is what is probably is, or if you eat healthy, if you eat tasty vegetables, then what you realize is that you can trust your own capacity to taste as a way of feeding yourself, in a way that's healthy, because I think we more and more distrust, or have learned to distrust, our own capacity to taste, because we often think that if we eat what we find tasty, we get fat and we feel terrible the next day. That's the case indeed with industrially processed foods, yes, so we shove those aside. But then in that spectrum of non-processed and organic food, I think being followed by taste is.
Thank you for that. That's really interesting. It would be nice to bring it to Nikki, because you cultivated the garden here, and you also made choices, a lot of choices, in fact, right? Could you tell us a little bit about that, because it kind of relates maybe to what we're doing here. I mean, you, Marente, as a cook, how do you think about those things? So, Nikki, would you mind tapping into this?
Yes, of course. I think I just wanted to comment just one thing that Rainer said. This thing of like beyond organic, or like, I think it's really, really important to think that, actually, because like you can also say beyond local. Before you were saying that local is the future and all these things,
sure.
but there are also shortcuts in a way. There are also movements that are branding a certain like idea about what is the future and what is most sustainable, and in a way that is not enough. And that's why it's important to sort of to bring nuance into that conversation. And that is not easy. That requires a lot of work, a lot of education, and maybe more work than one single farmer can do, So that I find that really important, and this whole awareness about this complexity or these nuances is also something I would like to work with more in the future. And I tried to do it on a very small scale, but still, I think scale is not important here in terms of making a message come through or something like that. But basically what I try to do is to also introduce a lot of diversity and see what happens taste-wise, also like what complications are there when you introduce, for example, old varieties that have a very bad germination rate. All of a sudden you didn't seed enough seeds because you didn't realize, okay, these plants, they don't germinate the same as other more cultivated varieties. So, but still there's like a lot of value in that. But it's a long, like basically a farmer or a gardener has one season to test things. So, it's a very long-term learning curve.
But I really like this idea of taste as an indicator, as sort of pushing us to rethink models of food production. Maybe Mark, as someone who is, let's say, related to landscaping, the design of food production, or of food facilities, or food forests, for that matter. Do you think about that, like when it comes to the way these producers are cultivated. And these things, or is a food forest something completely different? It has different aspects to it, and might not work within thinking what kind of food production is necessary in order to tackle the issues that we were talking about as well.
I think a food forest has a broader solution to tackle several problems. So it's a broader instrument. I think to have a little hook with what Renier said with the flavors. If you look at the supermarket, you maybe have, I don't know, 25 species of vegetables you can buy. If you look at the wild edible plants that are around us in this climate, we talk about 300 plants. So why would you only pick 25 if you would actually buy all 25 in the supermarket, which we probably won't, because they all have something that which you can need, like in terms of minerals. So I think it's good to have. I mean, it's good to have annual plants. I don't see people just living from perennial plants. I think it's too radical, maybe for some people. So I think if you combine in the food forest annual crops and perennial crops, then you have more diversity. You get extra crops. Some people call them weeds. They're also wild plants with their benefits. So, and you have something which covers soil permanently. You grow a perennial system which has fungi. So you're building a decent, sustainable soil. It can have heavy showers. It can stand drought. So it has a lot more to buffer. It offers a lot more variety in biodiversity for insects, which is very important. So in that sense, I think a food forest is a bigger solution. It's also a bit further away in evolution of farming. It's still like in child's shoes, as we say in Dutch. Yeah. So it also means how will it look in 5 years, in 10 years. And I think coming back to what René also said, is it looks like we're shaping the world as we would like it to be, because people can change stuff. We have techniques, we're smart, we have science, but the world is also, or life in general, is also about accepting what's already there, and you can't just brush things away that are maybe not as nice as you would like it to be. So I think in a food forest you can also accept more wild plants coming in, other products that maybe have more bitterness or more sharpness. And if we keep on cultivating and pushing away things we don't like and just gaining stuff we really like, we're really getting further away from our nature, and our relationship changes with our environment. So I think coming back again to relationship.
I suppose that your task is much more educational, and it has a cultural aspect to it as well, rather than food production.
Also, both. Yeah. It should also be like a CSA that people can pick apples when the apples are ripe. Right. And right. It should also be that.
Yeah. And just to bring it back to the local, because I'm super interested in that. So how do we tackle this then? So if it's not in fact about the local, because I felt that could be sort of the answer as opposed to large scale production, right? Because what did we do? We started to defunctionalize, let's say, agriculture, separate functions, right? Separate species, putting them over larger plots of land, because then you can do it on your own. You need less labor because you have machines for that. But then we had to introduce pesticides. We had to do all of these things. So let's say this large scale production. Then you have maybe in the middle of that what you're doing, more organic, local produce, and maybe in the future the food forest, which might be sort of very complex system that might be very hard to upscale. Let's see. We know that people are working on it, but what does it mean to? I thought that local might be an answer to scale, a proximity, because your community is close to you. It's also educational in a sense, because you see the people that buy from you every week. It's not like the supermarket, you don't have the connection with the people that produce that food, etc., etc. So what do you mean, in fact, that we need to overcome this idea that it's about the local, it's about much more than that? Maybe can you elaborate a bit?
Yes, sure. Yeah, it's not to denounce the local movement. But actually, like, I think we never answered the first question you asked, because you asked something like, what is local and why is it relevant? Yeah. And also something about the local movements in the past. And like, I know that Henk is here today, and he represents like the slow food Limburg. Yeah. And the slow food movement is one of the movements that sort of brought back this idea of local cuisine, and also like promoting local artisans and etc. And I think that that movement is really important. But what I would say it sort of failed to do is to take it to a bigger structural scale. Right. Because all the things we have been talking about today is not only about local. Mm-hmm. It's about like big structural problems that are not only about food culture and the food web. It's about social injustice. It's about land grabbing, many things that are very complex, and the local movement is not able to only, like, it doesn't fathom that, and that's also okay. Like, it's very hard for one movement to sort of fathom all these consequences. But I think maybe it can be a combination of different things. On different scales. But what I find very inspiring is a term that is coined by a peasant-led organization called Via Campesina. Mm-hmm. And they coined this term called food serenity, which means it means access to healthy food, culturally appropriate food, and also the means to decide what agriculture should be. The means of agricultural production. So it's also on the farmer side. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's very important to bring that aspect into it, because it's not like a lot of movements are for the consumers, in fact. Mm-hmm. It's not for the farmers necessarily. And a lot of these movements, like the organic movement and the local movement, it can also easily be used as a form of branding strategy, you know?
As a form of?
Sorry? Branding strategy.
Branding strategy,
even
right.
I saw that Amazon sells local vegetables on Amazon, you know? Like, what does that mean, you know? Yeah. I mean, so, and also the thing that Wim, he mentioned, this thing that this whole branding of like Dutch meat that has been fed with soy from the Amazon, you know.
So it's not Dutch. Yeah.
So and also even if it was only Dutch, like, is that really where we want to go? Like, I just want to question that.
Exactly. So you put an emphasis on this problem. If you talk about the local, super interesting. Yeah. Maybe before we take it to the public, sort of a last question also to you, and I don't know if you have other questions, is also this relationship with art, because we are in an art academy, you know, and why would we bring farmers into the art academy? Would you mind saying something about that, this relationship that it has with art?
Yeah. I think there are many things that art can do in this context. Mainly, Mark has been talking about this, like, this role of creating connectivity and relationships with our food, and I think that art has a role in the whole storytelling element of our food culture, and also just highlighting what is going on. That's what I've been doing with my collective, the Soft Protest Digest, for example. Mm-hmm. And then, there's this whole like idea of kinship with our environment and our food and species around us. And this whole idea is something that you have to learn, and you have to embody, in fact, I think. And I think art can play a role in that.
Great, yeah. Shall we? Does anyone want to?
To the same question, and a bit,
maybe you can take the microphone.
Yes, sorry. as an answer to the same question, but from the other perspective is, or from an outside perspective. I mean, I'm not an artist in your sense in that respect, but for me, art, what art has been able to do personally is that it is a tool to take people into viewing reality in a new way, in a different way, in a way that arguments often, where arguments fail, art can sort of help transform also politically how we view the world, how we relate to our environment. And I think there is, if you look at the way we relate to our local environment, the way we relate to the plants there, all life there, we can explain with words, or what the pollution of the acre is, or we can say, wouldn't it be great if there would be more organic farming, or if we would eat more healthy, because all rational arguments. And I just feel that often that doesn't convince. It's one of the reasons why I stepped out of academia and into doing, because I think that I got more and more disappointed in the power of arguments, and believing more in the power of examples that can show people that you can produce differently, you can offer someone something to taste. But I would really hope that maybe in collaboration, that we could maybe find ways of, for example, showing people or sharing in a better way the relation I have with plants, or how it feels to work with them every day, for example.
Right.
If that's photographs on a microscopic level, or listening to the sound they make by amplifying it. I think those would be all more artistic ways of getting on a broader level, a more intuitive connection with our environment. And
Thank you.
There are
anyone else wants to? Because we can. Wim, I'm coming to you. We would like to take it to the audience as well to ask some questions, and for 15 minutes, and then we can have half an hour just us talking as well. Wim, is there something last thing you would want to add
about art?
Yeah,
I think it has the same beginning. For me, it has the same beginning as being a farmer. It starts with wandering for beauty, for nature, for creation, how you want to call it. Art has a very big role to play in our society, to shake people awake, because it's not mentioned a lot in this discussion. It's too short in time. But an important question, I think, is, are we on a good way here in the Netherlands and Belgium if you talk about food and agriculture and being good for our environment? I think we are really not good. We didn't even start. Many people, if you ask them, what are you doing for the world, they can say, I eat organic food, my clothes are organic. Maybe I have solar panels on my roof, or I drive an electric car. Maybe it are all good things, but it doesn't help anything if you don't change your way of consuming. And if that question is not asked, nothing will change. Right. It's a shame the way these countries who have some knowledge are dealing with the world. Politicians know very well that the Netherlands or Belgium are not good in producing organic or taking care. They, as usual, Dutch and also Belgium have try to justify their behavior by saying, for example, we are good in other things, we are good in innovation, in making better techniques to improve some processes. Let's do that, and not that farming. That's for something in less, even in less developed countries. We have our contribution in this, and I'm really angry about that. Innovation you can do for two reasons. You can improve your own process for your own profit, or you can have another goal to improve for everyone in the world. I doubt if it's possible to make a combination of that. What I see here, it's the first category. For me, real innovation in agriculture, it's a small-scale farmer who uses with very poor materials a new skill for working on his land in Russia or Moldova, or it doesn't matter where. Or a school like in Benin, the African country. There's a school for organic farming. It's called Centre Songhai. It's very famous in Africa. They receive students from all over the country, all over the continent, no matter women or men or religion or country. They do a great job, and they make strong young people to go back to their places and to start a real agriculture. Or another example of real innovation I see, it's, for example, a Canadian farmer. It's called Jean-Martin Fortier, who is developing a way of farming on a small scale, and who shows his experience to the world for free. You can look his post on the internet. It's a last example. Cocopelli, a French association that fights for right-free seeds all over the world. They have a lot of tegenstand, resistance of governments and of agro-industry, of course, but they succeed to work on a still small scale that countries and that farmers in other countries are not don't depend on the seed companies and the chemical industry that rules the world in this moment.
Yeah,
that's
thank you very much. I'm going to take it to the public. Who can I give the microphone first?
Thank you for your motivation statements. High-end, I would say. I have a very practical question to the both of you, Renier and Wim, about climate and small scale, in particular water, the droughts and too much water. We had torrential rains in July. We had two dry years before. How do you go about that? And how do you go about that differently compared to large-scale farming?
Personally, I think for a small-scale farmer with a lot of kind of crops, it's difficult, of course, but it's easier than the big-scale farmers who is just growing one kind of potatoes and one kind of carrots. For them to adapt in another situation, it's more and more difficult. But climate change has a lot of influence on farming for everyone, for me and for the big ones too. I don't know if that's an answer that.
Well, I agree that I mean I'm afraid of or looking at the last 2 summers especially, where I didn't have on my main fields like a proper irrigation system put in place. That was at times quite difficult, right? So I've been adapting a lot and changing some practices, about which I can say a bit more. But indeed, for like large scale, say my colleagues in the village who do 450, so in Cannes, 450 hectares of potatoes and corn, their irrigation on all those plots is not an option, right? Quickly changing something about how your soil responds to drought is not an option. It's just like specifically there, you can do something about the extent to which your soil is capable of retaining water. For example, by working working more organic matter into your soil, which makes that the carbon load over your soil increases, which then also improves water retention in your soil. But it also has an effect on soil life, which then improves the extent to which water infiltrates into your soil, etc. So the thing is that their large-scale farmers cannot that easily do that much. We, on a smaller scale, are in that sense more able to say, well, maybe this year I put some more compost, or I intensify my cover cropping to do something about organic matter in the soil. I might plant trees so that I can play a bit more with shade. Which is actually that, as an answer to your question, one of my plots has on the southwest side a line of trees that is about 25. I'd say 20. The highest trees are about 20 meters, so I can play there with the shade in planning my my planting scheme for a year. So crops that can suffer from heat, I plant in the spots where I expect, or where I'll have some shade in summer. Like, for example, celeriac that can suffer quite badly from like solar burn. I plant there in summer, or and then my sweet potatoes in the sun. Right. So that's another way in which you can respond and adapt to climate change.
So if you have too much water, this was all too little water.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with too much water, and also compared to large-scale farming?
So a main or a big problem with a lot of water on for large-scale farmers is, in the first place, that it runs off. Right, so that you get erosion of the topsoil, which is a massive problem. If you look at the color of the acre this spring and in summer, after those heavy showers, it was a mud stream. And then we think, well, it's just, I mean, most people think it's just brown for 2 days. What happens there is that sort of the arable land that has been built up over millions of years just runs off through the acre, and that might not be a problem for us, but that topsoil doesn't come back, or it doesn't come back in 1, or it doesn't come back in 20 generations. So what runs off there is the land on which my children or grandchildren might farm. So that is a big problem. How some and the issue there is that because like most crops are just chemically sprayed to get rid of weeds, the soil is bare, right? So what some people do is that they sow a cover crop underneath the cash crop, like in corn, so that there is some cover which prevents runoff. Other people in potatoes, for example, potatoes are planted on hills, right? Between which you get massive runoff. Is that every 20 meters you build a little dam in that, like in between those hills, so that water will actually infiltrate. That's what they do. What I do mainly is work on how porous the soil is by improving soil life, so adding more food for soil life, so organic material to the soil, cover cropping, compost. That's I would say the main thing. Yeah.
Nobody else wants to? Maybe you wanna?
I belong to the lucky persons that didn't have problems with too much water. I deal more with less water. I live very close to the Maas. I can see the Maas from my house, but Kessenich is on a hill, and I didn't have to deal with too much water.
Yeah, I want to bring back the conference to Maastricht, and in a way I have good news. For 6 years ago, I wrote a proposal to the community of Maastricht for a piece of land nearby my house. It's in Kaberg. It's about 2 hectares. It's a big terrain, and I heard in December last year that the community is thinking on using this area for a food forest. I was talking with the community about a food park, what gives a wider way of a wider view of using this land. Not only that there can become some food forests, but also some space for people to rest, for children to be educated with a pool, a biotope, what we also can use there for the insects, and wildflower beds. And now, on the beginning of this, we, the Samen Groener, Maastricht, Noordwest, or Together Greener in English, this group will lead the initiatives what make this area now, this urban area, to a food park. On the beginning, I had also this question: in what relation has art, can give art and culture in a wider sense? How can we place this in this area? What function can that has from the beginning on? Not only, must I say, in a later as an additional thing, but as an integral thing. For example, how this area can be scaped to this new function as a park, not, you know, the parks as we know, like easy to maintain grasslands with some trees, but also with a lot of shrubs and walls, you know, stone walls, wood walls, etc. That is a thing what is coming now. In November, there will be the last harvest of the farmer. And after that, it's to us to bring this area to a new life, with a meaning to the people also living nearby. And the people, I think about all kinds of people. It's not only, you know, that it's good for, as I say, active people, but also for people living, older people, the children, you know, the diversity of people, the needs of all these people. It will be a great discussion, what I'm busy with at this very moment, with the neighborhood around that area. And this is a very intensive project we go in. So that is what I want to say. The other thing is a food park or a food forest, as we know it by now, is mainly fruit and nuts and maybe some herbs. But it is not, we don't talk about food production in any way, you know. It's a very easy to maintain way of getting fruit and all that kind of stuff, I think. Or when I'm fault, I want to hear it. But most food forests are just wild.
Yeah, maybe Mark, you want to... I know that Wouter van Eyck is working on food forest in lanes. Yeah, so that's the way, I don't know.
Yeah, so there's it started off with the romantic food forestry, the experimental phase, which is also good, especially if you have neighborhood level or with social functions integrated. But if you really want to compete and having production for a CSA or for a corporation, then you really have to work in lanes. And food forests being designed like over a few hectares are designed like that. So you have rows because you have to be able to drive through them with a small tractor or something to get the yield out. So it's also there's also some rationality in there. Yeah. And so it's a container term you can use. It doesn't mean you're gonna have apples or not. Doesn't mean you're gonna grow seeds or not. Doesn't mean you're gonna grow nuts or not. So it's like an empty box or an empty field, and you, depending on your wishes, you can design it as you would like it to be.
Henk Hoogakker, Slow Food Limburg. Dan weet je in elk geval wie ik ben. Ik heb een vraag aan Nikki. I like to ask a question to Nikki, not about slow food, about the things we're standing for, what is taste, for instance, and things like that. So I like your story. I just have one question to Nikki. I'm very fond of eat art. And when we're talking about the things we want to have, we're talking about taste, we're talking about engagement. And when we're talking about eat art, you're not only talking about Wim Schippers with his peanut butter, but we're also talking about Dali, who likes food. So do you have solutions for the thing I like to have, eat art, to solve their problem and my problem, to get people to eat the right food? So would you think about that? I don't need the answer right now, but eat art as a solution for our problem, to get people eating the right things, paying the right prices. But we know the problem. And step by step, up to you.
It's a big task, Nikki.
Okay. Yeah. No, I don't have the solution to that. But I don't think the solution is coming from one artist or one artist movement either. But maybe it can be like a trickle down effect that will sort of, spread certain ideas about food or how we relate to food, how food can be other than just consumption and so on. So I definitely think that food and art can be very important in terms of as also been mentioned earlier, like in terms of creating these bonds and relationship and kinship beyond just food, but spreading to environmentalism and how we understand our environment and other species and so on, and our own function in this place. Yes.
I wanted to go back to this idea of like how we can understand the complexity of our connection to the environment from this in-depth awareness of a mundane and very basic act, which is eating, and a very primal necessity. And going back to you, Mark, and your educational, like the food forest as a device for educational strategies and pedagogical strategies, and to you, Reinier, this is a bunch of questions at the same time, but I wanted to ask you, like, maybe connecting or engaging with younger people or people that are not so familiar with this, with the scientific part of growing food and this engagement with non-human species. If there is a possibility, or if you have had experience previously in collaborating with with schools or other educational institutions, in mixing that kind of type of approach to a place and to a specific task within that place in intersection with arts. Do you see any kind of potentiality to bring this embodied approach with matter through your expertise in food forest, but also through the expertise of Nikki? Is that some sort of like possibility there of creating a pedagogy that comes from this intersection? And then going back to you with the frustration, I guess, with academia that led you to more this hands-on approach. Do you now, from after or throughout your experience of engaging with the subject matter in firsthand, do you see any possibilities of rearranging or any cracks in this system in academia that can be leveraged, or is it a lost case in your perspective?
You want to go first, Renier? No? I'll buy you some time. Thank you for your question. I'm doing it already, or we're doing it already. I visit schools quite regularly in Maastricht. I plant vegetable gardens with them. I mainly focused on perennial plants, so shrubs, summer fruits, and small trees, so orchard trees, but on small varieties. And so we build lessons around that. So there's preparation, there's maybe designing. So you can see the school as a community. You have teachers, you have children, you have the parents of children. So it would be great to have an edible park in yours as a schoolyard, basically as a school playground. You come there a few times a year, and then but most of the time you're not there. So it's like, it's like here and there you hit people. Basically you facilitate them in having their own experience. You invite them to interact with plants or to play around it and have experience with that. Most of the time I'm not there, so I can't do more than that, other than it would be great to live with people in nature and actually feel. I think the more you live with nature or live in nature, then you feel how much you're depending on it and what you can take from it in a good way, and what you should respect and what the dangers are. But we live in such a civil world, I would say, that depending on the neighborhood I visit, and you see what people have in their lunchbox, some people are really far away from what I would like them to see, to be, so to say. So it's there's a lot of work, you can say. Everybody has their own process and their own environment, so it's also not something to judge too hard, I think. But it's being worked on, I would say. Yeah. And I think the more, well, again, it's about relationship. I think the more you know yourself and the more you sense what you need, then maybe it's also easier to move towards, it's easier to make steps towards what's actually good to you, and how you should treat your environment and food and interact with plants as well. I hope that's giving a bit of an answer to your question.
Yeah, it's so important, I would say, that we bring students into farms, or at least that we have education about what we eat, and about the nuances of growing things, and get people experience with it, I think. But that's a separate matter in the sense of, or to answer your question about my experience with, or maybe why I left academia. I was teaching here as assistant teacher at the University College here in Maastricht, where I did my bachelor's in liberal arts. After I did a master's in political theory, political philosophy mainly, which is applied ethics, which is about questions of justice, of social justice, of basically what kind of society we could live in, what our world could look like, if that's from climate justice to questions of social redistribution. And I started studying that from conviction, but also buying time, wanting to figure out what I stand for and what my place in society could be. But once I started, engaging with that world professionally, things shifted in the sense that it lost much of the freedom and creativity I felt as a student, and because that process was always, I felt it felt. In a way that I could seriously engage with my ideals, stand for them, and even if the grade was bad, if I had well defended my idea or if I had learned something about what I stand for, it brought something to me. But succeeding in professional academia requires that you do something else or only a bit of that. It requires that you navigate well in that professional atmosphere and or environment, and it also means specifically that you're expected to write and communicate in ways that will never, or very hard, that will never really reach a broader audience, which is a professional language of trained academics. So you basically write for each other, and that's something that I found, that has a place, definitely, but it's not the space where I can do something with the things I stand for, with my ideals. It's. I mean, for me, there came a point where I thought it was time for action, is there? I mean, and in that sense, I am worried about where part of the humanities and the social sciences is going, in the sense that I feel we've been, or they have been isolating more and more from politics and society at large, and that's partially a matter of style, I think, and that's perhaps differently in the arts. But I mean, the language, the vocabulary that's often used is just, and which you're required to use in order to be accepted, is just inaccessible, and I think that's really a big issue, and it's also something that to me at some point became that cage became, or that straitjacket became very limited. I want to be able to express myself creatively in a way that's free, and also feel free. Even if I write now, if I find time to write in winter, I financed that time in a way. I bought the time, so I don't. In that sense, I owe my words to nobody, and I can write freely. Both in content as well as in the way you structure and organize a paper. But I find it quite a pity, because I think that there are many people with fantastic ideas, or at least in the social sciences, in political theory and in philosophy as well. But it would be great if we could find more ways of bridging that theoretical and philosophical work with society.
Gives me an idea. We have the PhD here, PhD practice, to broaden that up to farmers too. You know, why wouldn't you be able to do that? Bridging the academic to the very practical and the concrete, and because that's in fact the practice PhD is actually bridging artistic and academic research. So researching the academic through the artistic, let's say, and that could be an answer. But I don't know. But for you, I mean, you want it just to be closer to people and to.
Yeah, but
I think
it's also about at some point starting to take responsibility for our environment,
exactly.
Right? Because
Instead
I
only
think
on paper.
Exactly.
Really
I think
yeah.
we also. I mean, that's also part of my sometimes a bit frustration with our generation, that I feel like we're very good at saying no. We're very good at saying what we don't want. We're very good at that, in that sense, protesting and saying, right, stop this, stop that, stop climate change, etc. But then comes the next step. Then comes waking up the next day and saying, where can I take responsibility? And that's often, I mean, those like global issues, I think often look daunting, and that can maybe give people the impression that there's nothing you can do. I do nothing. I mean, I feed maybe 100 people a week. For me, but that's perhaps also a big thing.
That's amazing.
But it's about, I think, if you have ideals, I think I would hope that in this area at least we can collaborate more and really motivate people to stand up and realize what they can mean for our locality. Yeah.
I want to end it there. Thank you very much. Very beautiful ending. And I thank you, the panel. Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here, sharing with us your ideas. Thank you, Marente, for organizing this, being here. Thank you, public. Thank you, people online. That was. You want to say something?
I want to say thank you to you, but also to the online audience that might not have had the chance to ask questions, that you can email them to me and I can make sure that perhaps you're willing to answer them in a later stage. And also the links and the people that we've been talking throughout this conversation, that I can put them online somewhere, like Jean Martin and Coco Pelli, etc. That would be nice. That people can have a look at what we've been talking about in depth.
The glossary,
the links. The bigger. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, welcome everybody. My name is Marente. I coordinate the Food Lab and I have organized this festival. Thank you for people that are here live. It's very exciting for us to have people from outside the Academy to visit again after this whole period of no openings. I will be doing a short intro for Robin, whose project this is. And he couldn't make it because his brother is getting married, which is a good enough excuse. So basically, he's been cycling to all these local farms to collect milk from different types of animals, and has been making cheeses from these milks. And I guess the film that you'll be watching lasts about 10 minutes, and then we'll do the tasting downstairs afterwards. And basically, if you have any questions afterwards, then please ask me and I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, enjoy.
The cheese.
Look at this first. I'm going to go very slow. Like, this is very watery.
But
that's
fine. Yeah.
Okay.
If you want, you can add it on bread as you wish.
Okay.
But the problem is, yeah, that's true. That's good. You did not get any paper.
Oh, Jesus Christ! This is interesting. Oh my God.
Does it smell like
if it seems super strong.
No.
Get some bread with it.
Oh, okay. Now first I go raw.
If you want, I can start first, if you prefer.
Ah, man. It's probably so bad.
I'm gonna be honest. Because like I did 2 batches, and so one was a bit higher than the other one because the molding process was not exactly the same. So maybe both of you can tell me what you did on it, maybe.
I think for the first 2 days I did nothing.
Yeah.
I think I forgot it in my studio. I kept reminding myself every day that I'll take it back with me home, and then I kept forgetting it. So first 2 days it was in the box, and then I opened it and it was quite moist. It was really moist by that time. And so
Actually, the lavender.
But then that's really fine.
And then the first molds came, and then he said that's going okay. But you also once said to take away the green parts.
Yeah, sometimes they're not bad per se, but it looks better also sometimes just to have the white ones.
And I added some lavender because I got from Morgan this bag.
We have a cheese that's ripened in some fennel leaves that are harvested from a biological community garden in the east.
Wow,
of
it lost
Maastricht.
a lot of weight, and there is a beautiful layer of probably penicillium growing on the paper. Do you want to unwrap it?
Yeah, it went on the outside of it. It's pretty wild. Oh, it's really soft.
Oh wow! It's gonna be crazy runny. I tasted it. Here you go. This one. You want to try one? One bit?
If it's quickly, because I gotta go, but...
Okay. Try at least this one. Quite dry.
So this is the one you ripened, Wim?
Yeah, with the oregano. And it was in a box, like to ripen, like really like old fridges.
And what is this one wrapped in?
It's it's fig leaves.
It's really good,
Yeah, of
both
course.
taste and texture. Right?
It's the cheese you taste.
Yeah, like it's dry, but it's not...
Wow.
C'est un fromage argileux.
Donc, comment t'as fait?
En fait, je l'ai recouvert d'argile. Je lui ai fait un masque à l'argile et j'ai laissé l'argile. Donc il a séché avec l'argile. Il peut pas vraiment sécher non plus parce que c'est...
We left it. So I was talking to Coral about it this morning, and she was saying that so we get this amazing light, like we have this window on the top of our house, and we get this amazing light that comes in the morning, and so we were like, let's just let it soak up the morning light and see what happens. But it also gets very hot.
Yeah.
So it's right by the window. So and I wasn't sure if we should mix it with the flavor, because I was like, maybe you want to keep it really pure, and it's just about like the environment, the conditions.
Yeah, okay.
So we didn't do any flavoring.
But that's nice. It's nice to have both, basically.
Yeah.
Because like there were lots of people who had some herbs and like stuff on it.
And this is just pure light.
So like that's nice, yeah, to see what's happening when it's exposed to normal temperature, to the sun,
Yeah.
etc. Because that's something quite uncommon actually.
It probably gets extremes too, because it's like baking in the sun, and then it gets like...
But if you want, you can try it first with without bread.
I would prefer to try it without bread.
Yeah?
Do you also want to try it later?
Yeah.
Go on.
Good, okay.
I just need the video of...
It's crunchy.
It tastes like a combination of cheese and my basement.
And do you have the taste of the beer?
I mean, it's a bit sour.
Yeah?
So I guess so. Also, the sour beer that I used is it's ripened in oak casks, so it has this tannin stuff, and I think I kind of taste it.
That's interesting. I never had a cheese that has a tannin flavor.
No, it's also what I think is weird, that there's still hard cheese inside and soft on the outside, and I think normally it's the other way around, no?
No, it's quite common that it goes this way. Because most of the active microbes, like the ones that are on the surface, are transforming the first layer. And you can even have problems when it goes too fast. And then like sometimes the skin runs off your cheese, but the inside stays hard somehow. If it goes too fast, if it's too warm. So here it's really fine.